we're going to engineer the shit out of this. Okay, we're just going to use brute force. We're going to use a little bit of percussive maintenance. Okay, just knock the chicken out. Just hit it against a rock. Oh, look, we're finishing up Prodigy. Uh-oh, wait, oh no. No. This one's going to be a toughie to explain. This is a Timey-Wimey episode. What that means is that we have an episode that's dealing with time shenanigans. Okay? Now, if you know me, you know that I don't love time travel episodes. Time travel episodes can be great. I just think it's a little bit of a crutch if you're writing an episode and you want to have some cool sci-fi concept. Well, we're going to need some time travel in there. Sprinkle some in. Now, whenever you're dealing with an episode that is using time travel, the alteration of time, what have you, you need to kind of step back and say, let's not get into the weeds over this. You could sit here all day needling every little point, and you would still come up short, because a lot of times time travel, when you look at it objectively and scientifically, when it's used in an episode of some show, often does not make sense. There's often little problems here. Oh, but if they're going back in time, why does this happen? And blah, blah, blah. This is a paradox, and this doesn't work. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's not worry about that too much here. Time travel has happened in Star Trek before. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Let's just leave that at the door. This is Star Trek Prodigy, Episode 8. What was this one called? I always forget what it's called when I go to review it. I watch it 3 or 4 times, and then I forget what the episode's called. Time Amok. I knew it was some kind of interesting name like that, because Time Amok is obviously the inverse of a previous episode of Star Trek called Amok Time that you might remember. I won't be going into that episode here, but you can look it up for yourself, and you should definitely watch it. This episode takes cues from past episodes of Star Trek. I've seen people compare this to a multitude of episodes. I was getting Cause and Effect a lot. That TNG episode when I watched, where the Enterprise is destroyed in the opening scene, and then they have to relive the last few moments before it's destroyed to figure out what destroyed it. I thought it was going to be like that, and I was like, oh, this is kind of a takeoff of that episode. But as it went on, it kind of became more of its own thing. It was, first time I watched it, it was confusing. Trying to parse out how this plot was taking place, and I don't know how kids are supposed to understand this. Because not only do we have a time-altering episode, we have a time-altering episode where multiple characters are in different times. Like, are kids gonna be down with that? Is this really a kid's show? Like, if we're honest with ourselves, does this feel like a kid's show if we watch it? Not to me, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt and dive right into Time Amok. This episode is a continuation of the previous episode, technically, and might I say, this series so far is doing an excellent job of having an overarching plot line. Like, we have a plot arc that goes across every episode, but then every episode feels uniquely different. It feels like a good combo of the way Star Trek used to be and the way it is now. It's well done. It reminds me of the last season of Star Trek Enterprise. The way we had mini arcs and a big arc, and yet every episode felt like its own thing. It's pretty well done. It doesn't feel like I'm watching a 20-hour-long movie. It feels like I'm really watching separate episodes, but then there's a little snippet to remind you of what's going on in the background. So well done in that regard. And why is it like that in this episode? Well, we see the Ferengi from the past episode, Nandi, selling information to the Diviner, our big bad, or is he, for this series. Nandy knows where the protostar is. It's holding Chimerium. Here are its coordinates. He gives it to Gwyn's father, the diviner. And, we can't possibly get that first, so what do? I think we send, like, a subspace, I think we do a subspace hack of the protostar, or it has something to do with Valnicat coding that is already on board the protostar computer that was planted there before it was lost. Because remember, Dreadnought was already on that ship, right? Before it was lost. He was the one who took it over from Chakotay. He forcibly boarded it. This is not going to make sense unless you've seen the rest of the episodes. So, it's an interesting point. They don't waylay the ship physically. They don't go there. They trick the protostar's computer into replicating Dreadnought, the henchman, if you will, of Gwyn's father. So, and might I say, it was very ominous. I was kind of scared. Like, this episode was scary. I think kids are going to be a little bit freaked out by this, because this one was kind of dark and kind of spooky. And when Dreadnought fully replicated his body on board the protostar, it was very scary looking. It was way scarier than his original appearance, because this Dreadnought had a more muted color tone and had a more defined humanoid shape, and he walked around very in a strong disregard for his surroundings. It was creepy. It gave him an ethereal quality, like a ghost. I didn't like looking at it. It freaked me out in a good way. Because you want your villains to be scary, right? In your kids show. You want it to scare the pants right off kids, right? That's what you want, right? In a kids show, right? So, meanwhile, the kids, our crew, they're engaging in a holodeck exercise. They have to get a fox, a chicken, and a bag of grain across this river in a boat without having the chicken eat the grain and without having the fox eat the chicken. It's just kind of like a little riddle, and it builds teamwork, and they have to figure it out. And they can't figure it out because they can't work with each other very well. And that gets into the core philosophical theme of this episode, which I think came through very strongly. They couldn't figure it out, and they're knocking heads, and we can't do this. And by the way, Computer Janeway, we're not Starfleet. We lied. Sorry. The truth will out, and it just did. We're not really Starfleet, although I had my suspicions that Janeway knew that they weren't Starfleet all along. But they have the ship. We can't endanger them, so let's just fly the ship as per normal. We reveal to Janeway that we're not really Starfleet cadets, but it doesn't seem to affect the plot, which is a weird point. You'd think maybe Janeway would, A, know they're not Starfleet cadets already, which I think she probably should, and B, if they're not in Starfleet, immediately commandeer the ship and fly it directly to the Federation, just to override all the controls, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Like I said, let's not break it down too much, because we're dealing with a pretty good episode here, and I don't want to shit on it, if you catch my drift. So what happens? We're split apart again, and we're thinking, you know what? We're not a crew. We can't do this. But holy crap, we're flying into a tachyon storm. As soon as I hear tachyon, I think time. And if you were observant, and you watched this episode very closely, you would notice that the stardate at the beginning of the episode was wrong. It had a wrong number at the beginning that made it look like it was way further in the future than it should have been. Okay, so if you were paying attention, you could have seen that Janeway's brain was already being affected by the tachyon storm, and she does indeed at one point mention that the tachyon storm has messed with her temporal settings. Temporal meaning time. So it overrides a bunch of ship systems. It splits the time frame of the protostar, but most importantly, it destabilizes the protostar, which is at the core of the, U.S.S. protostar. Its namesake, if you will. And how do we fix this? It's going to blow in 10 minutes. But listen, the tachyon storm has split the protostar into like 4 different protostars, all experiencing different flows of time. Flow being the key word, okay? Jankum is the first to go. He dies in the explosion in this kid's show, and he says later on he remembers being dead. So, kids are going to like that one. it looks like it's a wave like this, right? That tapers as it goes on. So the closer you are to the explosion, the more extreme your time dilation or contraction is going to feel. So Jankum's right beside it. His time goes by in an instant for him, and he dies. Down below here, right, is rok-tahk. Time is very, very slow for here. Up here is Dal and Zero. Time is running almost the same for them, but not quite. And then all the way at the end, we have Gwyn, who was furthest away, and time is more or less normal for her. Okay, so let that be known. That is key to understanding the plot. If you want to understand the plot for real, how we get from A to B, how we get from there to here, it's a long road. We need to understand that. If we want to just go on the emotional journey, don't worry about it. And you can just watch it like you're a kid again. Or can you? I can't test it. I'm not a child. So we realized quickly that in order to get out of this problem, we have to make use of the fact that Janeway's memory goes across all of the different versions of hologram Janeway. So Janeway is the bridge between all these characters, and all these characters have to learn to work together by working apart. They have to learn to put blind faith in their comrade. They have to finish one piece of the puzzle to fix this problem, and then willingly die and hope that the next person in line completes the work that they could not finish. Okay? So Zero is designing a tool that will convert warp core power to protostar power to restore the gravitic containment of the protostar. So it's called a warp matrix, and it's this box. Zero designs the schematics, but Zero dies before Zero can build it. So she has to hope that Janeway can carry over her intent, his or her, I'm not sure what Zero is, to Dal. Dal later on builds it, but there's a part he can't find. He cannot, there's a coupler. We need an adapter to go between this pipe to this pipe in order to make it work. He can't find it. Okay? So we have to say, I'm going to die. Let's hope that Gwyn can finish this job further down the time stream, if you will. I know this is hard to understand. It is a time travel, in a sense, episode. You really have to watch it to get it, and I had to watch it 3 times before I fully understood it. Does that make it well written or bad written? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It was fun. Right? Gwyn needs to find this adapter, but guess what? Gwyn is furthest away from the explosion that triggered the protostar containment in the tachyon storm. So what does that mean? In Gwyn's time frame, they have the most time for the vehicle replicator to build Dreadnought, the massive file that was sent to the protostar's computer to the vehicle replication facility. So they had the most time there to build Dreadnought, and Dreadnought was completed in Gwyn's time frame. Dreadnought gets up, finds the adapter to fix the protostar so he can take it back to Gwyn's father. And there's nothing Gwyn can do about this. Gwyn is powerless in front of the towering Dreadnought. So what do? Gwyn presses a button and opens up the rear of the protostar, exposing the protodrive, as you've seen when the protodrive activated. And this actually exposed the protodrive room to space, the vacuum of space, and sucked Dreadnought into space, along with, unfortunately, the tool we needed to fix the protodrive. So, all this work for nothing. Or is it? There's one person we didn't talk about, rok-tahk. Rok-tahk was second closest to the explosion, but on the other end of the spectrum. So time is running very, very slow for her. Maybe I saw a spoon flying by her head, and it looked like, if I had a spoon in my hand and I dropped it, it might hit the floor in half a second. That spoon looked like it was going to hit the floor in like a whole 5 minutes. Okay? So like one day for us could be like a year or something for rok-tahk. And I did do some calculations to figure it out, just to see on my own behalf, but it's not really that important. Just remember that it's very slow for rok-tahk, okay? So we're experiencing, say, 10 minutes. Rok-tahk has all the time in the world to figure this out. Rok-tahk is what is essentially a 7 or 8 year old kid. Can a 7 or 8 year old kid fix Janeway's hologram program, build the warp matrix, find the adapter, and install it correctly without having any prior knowledge? The answer is no. There's no way they could figure it out. But we're dealing with an alien being. Rok-tahk is not a human. And rok-tahk had a long time to figure it out, which is kind of sad. There's a lot of heart-wrenching moments in the show showing rok-tahk all alone. No one's left on the ship, everyone's dead, and rok-tahk is experiencing such a slow progress of time. I can't do it. There's no way I can do it. Wait a minute. Yes, I can do it. I just have to believe in myself. I have to believe in the Janeway that believes in me. Somehow rok-tahk builds the warp matrix, finds the adapter that Dreadnought originally found, plugs it in, has it work after fixing Janeway's program, and reverses the damage done by the tachyon storm. It's really quite amazing, and the science technobabble coming out of rok-tahk, I would never have guessed rok-tahk to be the technobabble deliverer. This episode does have, other than with Janeway, shades of Voyager. A few of the bad times in Voyager had to do with relying on technobabble to save the day. And this episode didn't have it that heavily. It had a little bit of it, so there was a bit of a scare factor there for me, taking me back to the bad old days, even before Discovery. Kind of when we were starting to see the creeping up of technobabble itself being the hero, which is kind of spooky, much like other things in this episode. This episode was scary. It was fun. It was pretty well written. Had a few heart-touching moments, and heart-wrenching, as I said. But I think at the core of this episode is the philosophical and moral question. I think what is firing on all cylinders with this episode this week is that we set up a problem, and we solve the problem, and we asked a question. Could this crew rely on each other with blind faith? Could we trust each other with our lives? Okay, could I, for example, to save my own life, design a tool that I would never be able to use? I would have to essentially start the project, die, and hope you finish it. Can we do that? Isn't that an interesting question? And it's a question that mankind has grappled with for a long time. Megastructures in the ancient past were often not completed in the lifetime of the person who designed it. Okay, if you were working on a pyramid, bad example because it was probably a slave doing it, but just imagine that you would probably not live to see it finished. Okay, because these things took time. People had a lot of time, and this episode, rok-tahk had a lot of time. For better or for worse, rok-tahk saved the day because she had a lot of time to fix it, but this probably also scarred her a lot mentally. I mean, Janeway told Gwyn she was here for a long time. Too long. Ominously. When Gwyn asked how long rok-tahk was here. And you need to understand that time flow is not at the same speed for everyone here. That's key. You need to get this into your head that different characters are experiencing a different amount of time in this episode. So this is it's a strong rok-tahk episode. We kill off Jank and Pog immediately, unfortunately, so this isn't a good episode for him. But rok-tahk is taking the spotlight, okay? And we have the shadowy specter of Dreadnought returning. And even at the end, you see the one glowing eye for his incomplete form when the vehicle replicator could not finish constructing him in the time frame that we ended up having at the end of the episode. So, lots of little interesting tidbits here and there. Interesting little nuggets of information dropped with regards to the plot and the overarching plot. Visually, it's stunning. I mean, I'm starting to love the look of these episodes. Are bangers visually. Lots of really cool shots of the protostar all alone in space. Very cool shots of the protostar interior from the outside. Like, there's a shot where the ship is flying by and we're outside the ship and we're looking in and seeing people move around inside the ship. So cool. So well done. So bright. I could see what was happening. Imagine that. Again, the sound. Beautiful musical motifs playing here and there. It really captures your attention and invites you to imagine the adventure in your own mind. It invites you to go along with them. The musical motif, it is enrapturing in many instances. So props to the sound design team, props to the composers, and props to the visual designers who designed the props, if you will, for this episode. That being the ship and everything around it and everything you see, and the look of Dreadnought. Very scary. I prefer this Dreadnought to the original Dreadnought, to be honest. The way he was moving, creepy. And his color, is just the color of his body and his shape, spooky. So we've said good visuals, good sound, decent plot, a few far-fetched moments here and there. I was wondering why, 2 episodes ago, we went into the holodeck and we talked to Scotty, Spock, Odo, Beverly Crusher, Nyota, Uhura. We had an all-star team before. It made me wonder why it was that, for example, Janeway did not tell Rok-tahk to go to the holodeck and ask Scotty for help. Did you think of that? It wouldn't be the first time it's happened on Star Trek. People have gone into the holodeck to ask other engineers for help before. It's happened. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I wonder why Janeway didn't tell Rok-tahk to do that. Maybe Janeway could have created a holodeck program for Rok-tahk that would have a really good teacher in it that would teach Rok-tahk how to learn to do these things faster and with less stress. And for all I know, maybe that's what happened. They didn't point it out, but maybe it was there and they just cut it. You gotta be brutal in the editing room sometimes. So maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. But it would have been cool if we saw her getting taught how to do this by Einstein or something. That would have been kind of cool, wouldn't it? In the holodeck. So how would you solve the chicken, grain, and fox riddle? Why don't you say down in the comments how you do it? I know what my first instinct was. My first instinct was to have 3 people in the boat, 1 person holding the grain, 1 person holding the fox, and 1 person holding the chicken, and make sure they don't eat each other. Just hold them. They can't be that strong. Is that cheating? Somehow I feel the program wouldn't allow you to do that. It wouldn't allow you to put them all on the boat at the same time. It would just stop. It would glitch up or something, or say incorrect, or say fatal error, or say try again. But that's what I would do if I was in real life. Just use force. We're going to engineer the shit out of this. Okay, we're just going to use brute force. We're going to use a little bit of percussive maintenance. Okay, just knock the chicken out. Just hit it against a rock. Maybe don't do that. This has been Star Trek Prodigy Episode 8, Time Amok. Getting a little bored of these names for these episodes. They're not that clever, and they're trying to call to mind past episodes for not a very good reason. I don't know why this had to be called Time Amok. I don't know. This should have been called Timey, Wimey, everything's different and we need to fix this problem and it's confusing. Pretty good episode, and I'm giving it a 6.5. Not as good as the last one. Definitely not as good as the one before the last one, but still pretty good. A 6.5 is not a bad score. This episode, you watch it, you feel better for having watched it, you don't feel bad, and you don't feel suicidal at all. There's a lot of bad episodes of Star Trek coming up. There's about 6 months straight of Star Trek I'm going to have to put up with. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm getting scared. I have to watch all of Picard Season 2. Oh, the rest of Discovery Season 4. Oh, and Strange New Worlds. Oh. I don't know, maybe Strange New Worlds might be okay. Despite what you may think, it's not fun to review an episode you don't like. You may watch videos on YouTube of people ranting and saying, "Oh, I could do that. Look, all he's doing is turn on the camera and complaining." It's not that easy. It gets to you. Every bad episode you review, it kills you a little bit inside. It's not very fun, and it really scorches the brain. So let's hope the next few episodes are pretty good. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm about to disappear.